Hello, everybody, and welcome into the Cards HQ podcast. I am Jeff Greer, your host, and every single time this music plays, I want to make a Little John joke, so I apologize for almost making it again. We got a fun podcast for you guys. First and foremost, it's Clemson week, which is every year since I have been here a big deal, and this week is probably the biggest deal since last time they played. College game day is coming to town, and these are two top 15 teams. The injury to DeAndre Francois at Florida State has upped the ante to this one. Louisville happens to be the home team, making it a very intriguing contest. So we're going to talk a lot about that game today. And we're going to offer up some predictions and break down a few things to do with that game and talk about College Game Day, which will be here. They arrive Thursday evening, and I believe the set will be done by Friday, and then the show will air 9 a.m. to noon on Saturday. They'll also have College Football Live. That'll all be over at Grawemeyer Hall, which, if you don't know where that is, it's on 3rd Street, and it is not close to the football stadium. It's about a mile away from Patterson Stadium, which is a large block on the other corner from PJCS. So there's a chance to do something fun for Louisville fans before a monster game on Saturday night at 8. Louisville is begging its fans to wear black, so it'll be a blackout. But as I said, this is a special episode, and it's not just because of the Clemson game. I am actually sitting in a soundproof room at the Courier-Journal headquarters, with our new Louisville football beat writer, Jake Lourim. Jake, how are you?
I'm great, Jeff. How are you?
I'm doing great. So today's podcast will be an introduction to Jake here in 1 second. I will just do my weekly begging/informational 15-second spiel here, starting right now. I promise it'll go fast. You can find this podcast by searching Cards HQ on iTunes, SoundCloud. You can download our app, the Cards HQ app, and there is a podcast tab on there. And you can always find us on courierjournal.com. So if you do that, especially if you do the iTunes thing, it will then send the podcast directly to your tablet or your phone, and you will always have it. Just plug it in or use your Bluetooth or whatever in your car, and you can listen to us on your commutes. God forbid you're ever stuck on the Watterson Parkway. Any of that stuff, it literally is a parkway, but that was a terrible joke. But you can listen to us anytime on there, and we appreciate it. So, first and foremost, Jake, I'm going to give you 3 questions.
All right.
Okay. And I'll tell our listeners here, I did tell him 3 questions were coming, and I promised him that only one would be offbeat. So the first 2 will be serious.
Okay.
So why don't what's your 30-second spiel about introducing yourself to people? What do you tell people?
I grew up in Michigan in a suburb of Detroit called Troy. Went to school at Michigan and covered football for the daily paper there for the last 2 years at school. Covered Jim Harbaugh's first 2 seasons, traveled to the bowl games and everything, and then came down here to cover football here, and looking forward to an exciting year, exciting time. It's too bad that couldn't start on a week where more wasn't happening. Too bad I had to start on such a quiet week, but looking forward to it.
It's literally the equivalent of starting the week that Louisville plays Kentucky in basketball. Maybe not quite as amped up.
Right.
You'll notice this on December 29th when they play and the build-up to it. There's just this weird, awkward tension in this state
Yeah.
when those 2 teams are about to play. But this is a big, big game, and there's a whole week leading up to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that it has quite dawned on people just quite yet as Louisville fans that Florida State's star-ish quarterback, potential star quarterback, DeAndre Francois, who I think people were expecting to take a big leap forward this year. I don't think people realize that all of a sudden this game may very well determine the entire divisional race. So you have picked a good time. It's game day. I of all the weeks to start covering Louisville football, this is a significant cannonball into all of this. So tell us something that, in addition to you're from Michigan, you went there, you've done a few internships elsewhere. Is that right? Where did you work?
Well, I've worked at USA Today, Baltimore Sun, and the Philadelphia Inquirer in the past.
And you lived in all three.
Right. D.C., Baltimore, and Philly.
Okay. So you have done the dotting up the
up I-95.
Yes. All terrible. It's terrible. What's your favorite city out of those three?
That's tough. That's a really tough one, but I'll probably say D.C. It's just a really I like history. It's a really cool place to be. I love Baltimore, but D.C. is a really cool place to live. There's always something to do, and there's always something to see. So I'll say that.
Where did you live in D.C.?
In a good spot on GW's campus, which is in Foggy Bottom, if you know the area. But yeah, it was a great spot.
Perfect location.
Yeah, perfect location, right down the street from the mall and everything. So,
when I was your age, when I was 23 or 24, I took a date to. We went to dinner and then we walked to the monument, Washington Monument and the Lincoln Memorial. And she went home, and I went to the Foggy Bottom metro station. For people who have not ever been to D.C., it almost feels like you're descending into like the wrath of hell. I mean, it is like a mile down on the escalator, and I saw someone fall down that escalator.
Oh my god!
It was incredible. I felt
down the escalator?
Yeah, they were okay. Which is shocking to me. They didn't fall all the way down. It was about halfway down, which is a normal escalator. Yeah. And they were somehow okay. It is to this day.
Because it's a huge escalator.
Yeah, and it's an escalator, so it's metal teeth, and they literally fell down metal teeth. I cannot believe to this day that they were okay, but I spent a lot of time. I used to live there. I lived there for almost, 2.5 years. And it's definitely one of my favorite places. A lot of people kind of don't like DC, but I think it's great.
Yeah, I like it a lot.
Yeah. So different types of sports cities that you've been in. Michigan is probably Ann Arbor and Louisville in terms of how crazy the fan bases are, probably very similar. Okay. I learned something about you before we pressed play on this or record on this podcast, and it is right up there with what I told you, and we're gonna be fair to each other here. I didn't really truly learn how to ride a bike until I was 26. So it's out there. You make fun of me all you want. Just never really wanted to do it when I was a kid. Gave up a lot. My parents got really frustrated with me because I was a quitter when it came to riding a bike. But I just didn't like being defeated by stuff. So you told me that you have something that is a little unique.
Yeah, it's a go-to fun fact. I cannot smell. I do not have a sense of smell. It's always a good thing to share when you say your name, where you're from, and a fun fact about yourself, and everybody else says I like dogs. I have a go-to. I have no sense of smell. I have never had a sense of smell. There are some follow-up questions that people ask. I can taste. I can't explain why. I do understand that they're related, but I can taste. But there you go.
Are your other senses heightened because of the lack of smell? Do you think?
Not to my. I mean, I wear glasses, so
that's true.
I'm struggling there too.
I wear extremely high prescription contacts.
Okay.
Now, so you can't. So you couldn't hear on the other side of the newsroom someone talking.
No.
Okay.
No.
So that may be a myth. Okay. Good to know. Okay. So first and foremost, as you probably have noticed from when you solicited questions on Twitter, there is a large Twitter social media Louisville fan contingent,
There
and
is.
a lot of them do not take things very seriously, which is great. It keeps things light. But what has your impression been of Louisville from afar, coming in here and now getting started?
It's been a lot of fun. It's been that aspect of it has certainly been like what I hoped for, because I've gotten a lot of good, a lot of kind words, a lot of welcomes. So that reaction has been good. Gotten some good questions about the team, some funny questions to address too, and so it's been a fun time. I'm glad to be here. It's been cool. We'll do a video, I think, right? A short video Thursday.
Yep.
and a written post too. Get to as many of your questions as we can, and keep them coming, because I like to hear from you guys, and it's been cool so far.
Now there's a very, very, I don't know if you've been informed of this. It's a very, very high bar with the Ask Me Anything.
No, I'm prepared for that.
Just kidding. No, well, mine have devolved into many non-sports things, which is still fun. But
yeah, we're gonna have a good time.
So this is in my time here. Last year when Florida State came for game day, at the time this is the biggest week and day of Louisville football in their program history. They have been to an Orange Bowl and a Sugar Bowl. Teddy Bridgewater had a lot of preseason chatter and still was very productive in 2013, but they lost at home to UCF, which is a game that a lot of Louisville fans will sort of groan about and still talk about. That game definitely sort of just moved them off of the conversation about college football and being a contender and all that stuff. National college football, I should say. So then you can say that the Clemson game last year on, I believe, October 1st at Clemson was game day. They had game day there too, 2 weeks after they were here.
Right.
Was probably a bigger game than the Florida State game.
Right.
Even though it was on the road, it was Louisville's chance to, take the reins in their division and not desperately need Florida State, which was not great last year. They didn't need to rely on them to beat Clemson, which they did, and it didn't happen. So we are now talking about a game that is, and Tim Sullivan wrote a column about this, it is the biggest game that Louisville has played. What was your sort of takeaway and vibe that you got from Bobby Petrino yesterday? He doesn't really give a whole lot away at his press conferences. He's pretty mild-mannered and monotone, but what was your first impression of him?
No, you're right. He didn't. He does play close to the vest, and he was pretty quiet. He's not going to give any bold statements, really. But I think I got the impression that he likes the vibe that he's getting from his team. He knows they know what's at stake. He knows that they've been here before and have come up short, and he knows, and they have the benefit of last year to as experience. I mean, he admitted yesterday that he thought that his team used up a lot of energy in warm-ups, before kickoff, on the field at Clemson. And they can't do that again. So and it showed as they were down 28-10 in the first half. So I think maybe when just coming onto this stage is a little different from where they are now, where maybe they've been here for a while and they can use that benefit to their advantage. Even though both teams, these are two very new teams this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a really interesting dynamic because Clemson's defense now is the headline grabber, and Louisville has all different playmakers around. Not different, they were here last year, but just not primary guys all around Lamar Jackson. So it's certainly a kind of shifting of the teams. I do think. Did you watch the Auburn-Clemson game?
I did,
on
yeah.
Saturday? Clemson looked really good.
They did.
I mean, they look really friggin' good. 11 sacks.
11 sacks. I felt
unbelievable.
Bad for that quarterback.
There were a couple times where it was like they were talking, and the build up to it, and it was Herbstreit, right?
Right.
Was he calling that game?
Yeah.
Or no, he was.
It was Steve Levy and.
Yes, you're right. Yeah.
I don't remember. I don't remember. Brian Greasy, maybe.
It might have been Greasy, but yeah, I remember Steve Levy, and it was whoever was the analyst was talking about how every single time Stidham took a snap, it almost seemed like there was someone in the backfield face up to him within. He hadn't even finished his drop back. And they would put him in shotgun, same thing. Yeah. They would roll him out, same thing. The thing that's interesting about this game is that what we saw last year. Did you watch that game last year, the Clemson-Louisville game?
Yeah, right.
Because it was that game set both programs off on different paths.
Yeah.
If Louisville had won, obviously they would have been very much pretty much the rest of the season, provided they didn't lose any of the other games that they lost, would have ended up being in the playoff. And even if they had lost to Kentucky or Houston, might have still gotten into the playoff if they were 11-1 and won the ACC, and then 12-1. But that game sent Clemson well on its way to kind of know that the fate was in their own hands.
Right.
And they lost to my alma mater, the defending, the reigning national champion, the true national champion, the Pittsburgh Football Panthers, who beat Clemson. But Clemson was on that path, and Lamar Jackson was on the Heisman Trophy path. And I think Louisville felt like they took a step forward as a program. But it's fascinating that this is a team that Clemson is coming in as this defensive juggernaut who has a quarterback who seems pretty good, but it seems more like a just get it done kind of quarterback at this point in his trajectory. But I mean, Lamar Jackson is just there is no comparable experience that another team will have to Lamar Jackson.
Right. Yeah, I don't think that you can. I mean, it's really tough to predict what will happen when maybe the best quarterback in the country goes up against maybe the best defense in the country. Mm-hmm. Louisville is 5th in the country in offense. Clemson is 2nd in defense. Neither has really faced, much of. Louisville's obviously not faced a defense like the one they will see on Saturday. Clemson has not faced a quarterback like the one they will see on Saturday. So it's tough to predict, and you're right. It's tough to quantify how each of those forces will go against each other.
There's a lot of games where it's, one team will have a great defense and the other team will have a great defense, or vice versa,
right.
And it's just whose non-strength group can just hold the line enough so that their best group. But this is literally a clashing of their best suiting.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so I think what I'll be watching for there is who kind of takes the lead with the big plays, the momentum swings. Mm-hmm. And there are going to be some on both sides. I mean, we saw last year that it could happen. Lamar Jackson had over 400 total yards and 3 touchdowns, and yet Clemson still sacked him 5 times. Mm-hmm. So that's going to happen again. I mean, Lamar Jackson is going to have a big game most likely, and he's going to get sacked a few times.
That's right.
It's just I think it just comes down to which big plays happen at the most opportune times. Does Clemson come up with a big sack or turnover down the stretch when it's a close game, or does Lamar Jackson does he have one more trick up his sleeve down the stretch and find a way to lift his team to this in this game? So I think it just comes down to who makes the bigger plays at the better times.
I think that's an interesting point and true. And as a side note, not Kelly Bryant, Austin Bryant had 4 sacks?
4 sacks against Auburn. Yeah.
4 sacks?
It was funny. You mentioned the broadcast. They put up 3. They said Clemson's defense was the headliner. They put up 3 big names on the defensive line. And it was 3 big time players, and it was then Bryant wasn't any of them. It was 3 guys and then another one who had 4 sacks. So,
yeah.
I mean, it's really...
They are a ferocious defense. I do think that there might be, and you can tell me if you think I'm crazy, do you think that they can be run on, though?
I think maybe a little bit. Kent State, Kent State's not much of an opponent, but even that, they ran for a couple decent gains in the first half and moved the ball down the field a couple times. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see. Another question might be, does Louisville have a guy besides Lamar Jackson who can run the ball against this Clemson defense?
Yeah, that's Malik Williams. They're desperately hoping is that guy.
Yeah.
And another guy that was mentioned yesterday that Bobby Petrino sort of intimated might be ready to play soon was Colin Wilson.
Right.
And before you got here, I'm guessing if you're like me, you did a lot of research before you got here, so you felt comfortable. But he was he was a highly regarded recruit, and is viewed as a pretty physical downhill runner who could play right away, but it took him a while to get cleared to get here, and he got here late, and then he had a plate put in his hand.
Mm-hmm.
So he's been out for a couple weeks, and the potential is there for him to probably be good enough to be the starter for Louisville at some point this season, but Malik Williams made a pretty strong claim for that job on Saturday. But that is an interesting element, is can they add another solid running back? He warmed up against UNC. He dressed.
Mm-hmm. So
can they add another element? Because their offense in the red zone, and I can look up a stat here. It just seems like Louisville has been in the red zone a lot and not scored a ton of touchdowns.
Yeah.
They've kicked a lot of field goals.
Right. It happened against Purdue, probably a reason that that they didn't lock up that game sooner. Even down to the last offensive possession they had when they were up 4 and driving and ended up settling for a field goal again and kept it a 1-possession game. So I think that comes down to the big plays again. Can they get the ball in the end zone against the Clemson defense, which has not allowed a touchdown all season, just 3 field goals in 2 games?
Mm-hmm.
Or does Clemson make enough plays to get stops and get its offense back in the field?
Yeah. Well, so I just looked it up. CFBstats.com, by the way, is if you're out there and wanting to know a good stats site for college football, that's probably the best stat site. Louisville ranks 108th through 2 weeks of football in red zone percentage of red zone conversions for touchdowns, touchdown percentage. They've got 6 in 13 red zone trips for 46.1%. They've kicked 5 field goals, and of course have the 2 fumbles that they had against Purdue. So, not great, which is crazy because of the amount of offense that they have produced and the amount of times that they have scored. It's right. Insane to me that they don't do that great. They don't do that well in the red zone. When you watch Lamar, I'm always curious for people who aren't, not that we watch him any more than anybody else, but we've been following him for a while.
Right.
When you watch him, when you watch Lamar Jackson, what are some things that come to mind when you're just following him from afar?
Well, I think, there are a couple. The first that a lot of people have noticed and a lot of people have remarked about so far this season is that his arm seems a lot stronger and more accurate this year. So, a lot of people broke down and picked out the touchdown, the long touchdown he threw to Jalen Smith the other day at UNC, where instead of scrambling out of the pocket and making a play with his legs, he stood in the pocket, stepped up, and threw it downfield, made a perfect throw over the middle. So I think that's what and that last year too that we saw some of that, and that's what separates him from, a lot of run first quarterbacks who run good spread offenses and makes him a two-way dynamic quarterback. Right. The other thing that I've noticed just watching him against other defenses is it's more of a chess match, more of a strategic thing. The other defenses are always having to prepare for him. You notice a lot of linebackers, a lot of hybrid players just standing in space waiting for his next move, waiting to see if he's going to make a play or if he's going to get in space, because it's just, they use a lot of guys in contain, and rightfully so, they have to, but he takes up a lot of attention. You hear a lot about that with receivers taking a lot of the defense and opening up, but I think Lamar, the defense is key on him so much that and then when he rolls out of the pocket, I think a lot of teams game plan to go right to him, and so that allows him to make more plays, because I'm sure right now as we speak, Clemson is out there on the practice field right now doing drills where they have a guy roll out of the pocket and everybody on the field who's not guarding someone runs right to him. So I think that's what I notice is just how much of the defense's attention that he draws.
Yeah. Well, and that's where this year so far, and again, as you mentioned, I mean, they have played better opponents than last year at this point, but still we're not talking about barn-burning defenses. UNC's defense last year got a little bit better because Gene Chizik was there, but he's not there anymore, so their defense clearly was not prepared for him, or well, I shouldn't say prepared. They didn't execute well against him. But 64.7 completion percentage now, 55 of 85. And I think, you're right. The one thing that is definitely noticeable is pretty much every team that they play uses a spy. They have some position where it's usually, like you said, their hybrid defender that we're seeing more and more teams use, usually like a safety outside linebacker type who's super fast and strong, Derwin James type, and he was not in the FSU game last year.
Right. U of L calls it a star.
Yes,
star linebacker.
Yeah. So Louisville was able to just run roughshod with Lamar Jackson because they didn't have someone to spy him. Yeah. There were a couple times last weekend against UNC where you could tell that they were not running spies. They were playing zone, and there's no the reaction time. You have to literally dedicate at least one person to understand where Lamar Jackson is. Right. The difference is last year you could run, like you said, run directly at him and probably either create a turnover or just make it hard for him. And even if he got 15 yards on you, the next time he might get 2. This year, his ability to throw the ball downfield accurately has clearly improved enough where, and maybe that will change, but it seems like it has clearly improved after two games, where he is capable of knowing when to throw it away, when to not tuck and run, when to try to find someone downfield. He seems to be looking downfield a little bit more than he used to. But it's all of that really helps with a guy to improve what was a 56% completion rating last year, and it's already improved by 8%. We'll see if that continues, but I'm really intrigued to hear what some of these coaches who will be talking on the ACC teleconference tomorrow will say about defending Lamar Jackson, because now he appears to have added even more accuracy to his repertoire, and that's not a good thing for other schools. That's
right.
Yeah. It was right before you got here. It was really interesting, the build up to this season. The conversation was, this guy was unbelievable last year for 10 out of 13 games. He had maybe two or three so-so games and 6 or 7 like unbelievable games. And the conversation was, he won the Heisman rather comfortably, put up crazy numbers, and seems like he has so much that he can improve on. Did you what was your? I'm most intrigued by your first impressions You saw him, or you did not get to see him yesterday, but you have seen him on TV, I'm sure,
yeah.
and you've heard about him. But what are your sort of thoughts on him? And hopefully we get to talk to him tonight. But what have you kind of taken away from his persona?
Yeah, he just seems it seems like an interesting guy. I think he's pretty pretty grounded and pretty level-headed as guys like that go, both off the field and on the field. And I think maybe he's taken another step with that this year. He seems to be a good leader. He seems to know how to get this team going in the right direction because he knows they follow him. And I think on the field too, he's taken just a leap this year in his maturity. Obviously he had it last year, but I think I've seen better decisions from him this year. He's started to, some of the plays. There was one in the UNC game the other day where they were in the red zone. They were down around the 5-yard line, and he was falling over, and he just made a poor decision to just throw the ball up, and it was almost intercepted in a bad spot.
Honestly, it should have been intercepted.
Right. So you can't do that. But I do think he's made far fewer of those kind of decisions so far this year, and it's shown, and maybe made similar strides off the field too. It's shown.
Yeah, there was that play, and there were like 2 or 3 plays in the second half, I want to say, where they were on the far left hash and somebody ran a route that drew them to the outside on the far right sideline, and he tried to throw it across the field and didn't quite make those throws.
Yeah.
I wonder if Louisville will alter their game plan to not call those types of routes because or are they adamant that he can do it and they want him to do it? Yeah. I don't know. That'll be interesting to see. So we'll get out of here on this. It is we'll do 2 things. One, I assume that you have been at Michigan or on the road for a Michigan game when they had game day.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, was it the Ohio State game usually?
I covered it last year, Michigan at Ohio State, the regular season finale. It was in the stadium because it was a noon game. So the show was in the stadium. And then 2 years ago, it was in Ann Arbor for the Michigan State game when you may remember Michigan was up by 4 with 10 seconds left, and the punter fumbled the snap and Michigan State ran it back for a touchdown. So twice, once in Ann Arbor and once in Columbus.
Okay. So you've gotten used to the hoopla.
Right.
Is it I mean, you're a college football guy. Is that like, do you like game day? What is your like? I mean, I like it, but I don't ever watch it.
Yeah, I like it a lot. I think I mean, I'll watch. I don't know if I've ever watched the whole 3-hour show from start to finish.
Right.
I'll watch.
I think most people are like that.
I usually watch the top of the show and the end leading up to kickoff. But I think it's great. I mean, just it's funny to think about it seems like the effect of the show being a thing is almost greater than the actual show itself. I mean, people you've heard way more people around town, around our office, around anywhere this week. You've heard way more people say, "Oh, game day is coming," than people saying, "Oh, I'm excited to watch the game day show on Saturday," right? Because I think more than anything, it builds up the hype a little more. I mean, if you. It's a symbol of how important the game is.
It's a validation.
Right.
Absolutely.
So it moved to kickoff from 3:30 to 8, for example, which will add to the atmosphere. And when you hear people talk about how big this game is, you hear people say, "Well, it's against Clemson, game day is coming." So I think almost more than the actual show itself, just the fact that that the city and the campus has captured this level of attention again this year in week 3 has elevated the status of this game. So I like it. I think it adds a lot to the atmosphere.
Yeah, and there's a crazy thing about Clemson Louisville. They've played 3 times. Clemson has won all three by a combined 15 points.
Right.
But that doesn't even scratch.
Right.
What's crazier is Louisville had a chance to tie in 2015. And I think it was a missed field goal.
The kick, yeah.
Yeah. They were inside the 10
right.
at Clemson, down 6, under a minute, didn't score. And last year, the famous or infamous James Quick running out of bounds,
right.
they were down 6 in the final minute or final 2 minutes, and he ran out of bounds. And so you add that in to the fact that they're two top 15 teams, and game day is coming, and it's such a monster event for Louisville to have. And it makes it, like last year was, they've arrived, Lamar Jackson's legit and has everyone intrigued. This year this game might very well be the ACC regular season title game.
I mean, it's not hard to look down the schedule and go, Florida State's quarterback is hurt. I think a lot of people pointed to the Thursday night trip to NC State, but not
looking like it
overly
anymore.
Impressed
I was one of those people
with NC State so far. So I think it's not hard to look down the schedule and think about what this being an early ACC championship game, and also I think a lot of people, I'm sure a lot of fans obviously remember the last 3 Clemson games, and you have to think about, I'm sure people noticed Deshaun Watson's gone. I mean, the team that beat Louisville last year, Deshaun Watson is gone, Wayne Gallman is gone, Mike Williams is gone, Artavis Scott. So I think people think about how close U of L has been to beating Clemson the last 3 years, look at this year and go, if it's going to happen, it's got to be this year, right? I mean, if Louisville is ever going to get over that hump, this year is the year to do it.
Yeah. With Lamar Jackson still here.
Right.
Huge stakes, especially for Louisville. I mean, it's a big game for Clemson, but huge stakes for Louisville. I feel like this is major for that program. So, okay. We'll finish on this, like I said. Give me 2 things that you'll be looking for on Saturday in your pick. And why don't we do this? Why don't you do 2 things that you're looking for? I'll do 2 things that I'm looking for, and then we'll do the picks.
Right.
So you don't have to just go right into it.
Okay.
We'll save the good stuff for the last.
2 things that I'll be looking for. First thing that I'll be looking for, not just on Saturday, but also all week, what's the status of Jair Alexander? Because Lamar Jackson is obviously the X factor for Louisville, but Jair Alexander is the second best player on this team, and that he could change. I mean, in a game that's going to be decided by big plays, he could change the game if he plays with an interception, or he had 2 picks against Clemson last year, or a punt returner, or anything like that. So will he play? How healthy is he? How much speed has he maintained through his injury? Things like that. And then the other question that I have is, how does Louisville protect Lamar Jackson? Because we talked about the 11 sacks that Clemson had. I mean, he's an electric player. He's an electric quarterback. But if Clemson pressures him like it did Jarrett Stidham the other night, he's not going to be able to do much of anything. And so, I mean, Clemson bring pressure with 3 or 4 men from up front. They bring a lot of blitzes. How can Louisville? I mean, we've seen he doesn't need a lot of space, but can Louisville get Lamar Jackson enough? Can his teammates do enough to help him make the plays that we've seen him make? Right.
I'm going to play off of the Alexander one for one of mine. I think their corners, if Jair Alexander doesn't play, I think Louisville's in deep trouble.
Right.
I'm not saying that their corners are bad by any stretch, but their corners without Jair Alexander are kind of like B students at best. Ronald Walker has played okay in his 2 weeks. He started in Jair's place this past week, but is kind of a heavy, high-risk, high-reward, but will miss a lot. Trumaine Washington did enough at the end of the game to, serve his purpose, but he also got torched a couple times, and Deion Kane had a big game last
Yeah,
year.
he did.
And I would imagine would be a problem for them again this year. The other thing that staying on the defensive side, it's hard for me to imagine it being 14-6. I don't think that's going to happen. But what Louisville's defense has to do is they can't lose track of the tight end, who I own in ACC fantasy football. Yes, I do play that with a bunch of sports writers. It's embarrassing, but we do play it. What's his name? Milan Richard, I think his name is. Louisville lost the tight end for UNC a bunch last week, and then they lost their number one receiver, Austin Prohl, a bunch last week. And I wonder if their linebackers are up to the task of coverage. They're fast. They can get east-west pretty well. Stacey Thomas had the big interception against Purdue, so we know that they're capable. That guy has been, I will never forget this, Jake. When I first started here, the first game that I went to, I'm pretty sure it was his first game, or maybe it was 2014. It would have been 2014. But every time there was a monster hit on a kickoff return, it was Stacey Thomas. Right. And now he's their chief linebacker. But they struggled. They struggled with defending the pass, and they struggled defending tight ends in the passing game, especially against UNC. There was some confusion in the first half. So I'm really curious to see how they defend against the run, defend against a mobile quarterback, who they struggled with Chaz Surratt in the first half against UNC. And I think Kelly Bryant might be a little bit better than Chaz Surratt, although Chaz Surratt's pretty good. But that's a big question for me. Can they create turnovers and defend the pass? If they can't, then they better hope Lamar Jackson has a Lamar Jackson kind of day, because they'll be in big trouble. So, okay. This is a big moment for you.
It is, yeah.
What's your prediction for Saturday?
It's a tough one. It's a toss-up. I might flip-flop a couple times this week, but I'm going to say Clemson 29, Louisville 24.
Okay.
It's going to be another close game, and I think it's going to be another close loss to Clemson for Louisville. I think it's going to come down to a couple big plays. Might be on special teams, might be a couple turnovers, might be third down sack. Any kind of big play that changes the game. And I think Clemson has been at this level for long enough that they might make just a couple more, and so I think through a couple of momentum shifts at the end, Clemson's going to win.
I last year I stuck with the sort of boring but has held true for the most part that until Louisville beats Florida State and Clemson, I'm going to pick against them. Then they beat Florida State. I don't think I'm going to say we've got plenty of time before the Florida State game for me to feel differently, but my hunch is that that's a tough road game. So Louisville has yet to beat Clemson. There always seems to be a big play at the end that separates the two teams, and Clemson always makes it. One thing that I think is concerning for Louisville as the season goes forward is that Louisville has I'm trying to think. Lamar Jackson, Jalen Smith. I think Des Fitzpatrick is a big-time playmaker for them. They have a few guys who you think, in theory, should be playmakers for them, namely Travion Samuel, Reggie Bonifant, who just really haven't. I mean, Bonifant's touchdown was a big play. And then Jair Alexander is their big one on defense. So they need someone like Chucky Williams or Stacey Thomas or Drew Bailey to make a really big play. And they're going up against a team where it just seems like every position I'm not saying they're all stars, but it just seems like they have more options for big moments. Yeah. So I'm also picking Clemson. I don't actually surprisingly feel all that confident with it, with this pick. I was going to say a comparable score. So I will say similarly close. I will say I'll say 30-27 Clemson. Okay. I think it's going to be a really close game, but it should be a lot of fun. And it's the chess match is fascinating to me, and the unpredictability of the chess pieces that are involved this year.
Yeah,
with
exactly.
So much talent on the defensive line and defensive front for Clemson, and obviously Lamar Jackson. So cool. Well, thank you for stepping in. You did great. Your
Thank
first
you, Jeff.
podcast.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
Jake's first podcast. This is like send it to all your friends. This is a celebratory moment. But thank you everybody for listening. As Jake said earlier, we will have we'll have a video preview on Thursday, and we're also obviously going to have a lot of stuff on CourierJournal.com throughout the week. So keep it locked on our website. Just keep hitting refresh. The content is going to keep coming up. One last thing, Jake. Where can people find you on Twitter?
Yeah, so I'm at just my first and last name, at Jake Lourim. That's Lourim on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
And please send anything anytime. I'll try to get to everything before the week is up and on game day too. So looking forward to a good game week and to bringing you everything you need to know.
Well, there's something to be said about being lucky enough to have a unique name where you can get your own Twitter handle. Not too many people have that.
That's true.
All right, guys, we'll talk to you later. Thanks for joining us.